Welcome in to the PFF podcast. Steve Palazzolo here, along with Zac Robinson. It is our big-time Throwcast edition of the PFF podcast. As always, Zac has just gotten out of the film room. He's been checking out every single quarterback throw from the weekend. That's why he is our QB guru here. So, Zac, last week we said the quarterback play wasn't great, but what'd you see this week across the NFL?
Yeah, overall it was pretty solid. You had guys with good games in there: Tyrod Taylor, Blake Bortles. We saw Wentz last night. There was some high level quarterback play for the most part. A lot of guys were kind of over average compared to last week. I think just a handful of guys around average, or around 12 guys were over average this week. A lot of good play. So you saw some poor play in some games, but for the most part, man, it was a pretty solid week.
Yeah, there were some guys that looked really good, and we're going to talk a little bit about Carson Wentz in a moment. We got a little Deshaun Watson, even though he didn't play this past weekend. I wrote a little piece about him, about his grade as he heads into his game against the Seattle Seahawks. We had a good game from Blake Bortles of the Jaguars, and then we're going to talk just young quarterbacks in general, some second and third year guys. We'll discuss Jared Goff a little bit specifically, and then get into some. We had a question: Goff, Wentz, or Dak versus Winston and Mariota. Those last couple of draft classes, how are they faring? So we'll get into a little bit of that. Let's start with Carson Wentz, though. He's the talk of the town, Zac. Carson Wentz, 7 weeks in, MVP candidate, or just MVP overall. They've already handed it to him. Is that right? 7 weeks in?
Yeah, it sounds like it. If you read Twitter and keep up with that, they've crowned him already.
The primetime games they count as like 8, right? They count for like 8 games. So I always find that interesting, the way reaction changes. That's not taking anything away from Wentz. He was spectacular on Monday night. I want to start a little bit with what we've discussed about Wentz in the past. We both evaluated him coming out of college, and then certainly saw plenty of him his rookie season. Some of the strengths and weaknesses that we saw with Wentz, things that we wanted to see him improve upon. What was our general impression? Just catch the listeners up on what our general impression was of Wentz coming into the season before we get into maybe where he's improved.
Yeah, I think overall you just wanted to see him be more consistent from the pocket, like any first-year guy. You want to see that step in the second year, and most of it came with just clicking through progressions a little cleaner and feeling the pocket in the process, keeping the eyes up, and being able to manipulate the pocket well while still delivering the ball. And we've seen him take a huge jump in that department, from the very first week really, and kind of throughout the season is. He's clicking through progressions better and still using his athleticism and overall just more confident, I think, is the biggest thing. He's throwing the ball more confidently, trusting his receivers, trusting the play design, and everything is just flowing all together with their offense right now.
Now, last year, not necessarily at this time, but by about midseason, later in the season, people were talking about Wentz's mechanics. And, long arm, and, his accuracy's off because of his mechanics. But something you said there I think was important. Trusting what he's seeing and playing more confidently. And that's what you were saying last year. It wasn't so much the mechanics. It was that he just wasn't as comfortable, wasn't seeing the field as well, wasn't able to just rip it when he wanted to. Was that something, is that a big reason for his improved accuracy, why we're not talking about his mechanics? Is it just that year 2 comfort level that he has right now?
I think so, man. It gets talked about a bunch, and last year you said it, the mechanic thing came up, and I always thought it was just more so him not feeling good about what he was seeing, and there was a lot of high throws over the middle, and mechanically speaking, it looks pretty similar to what he did last year. It's all trust, and if you're a quarterback and you're seeing things more clearly and trusting that the receivers are going to be in the right spot and letting it rip, you're going to be more accurate. And I think that's what we've seen throughout the whole year. And his confidence has basically exuded on the entire team. And the offense, you see their touchdown celebrations, all that good stuff they got going is, it means a lot. So he's doing a great job. And last night was, it was on full display.
Yeah, I think that was the beginning of, or these last few weeks have been the beginning of what people expected from Wentz. We're talking about a guy with a cannon for an arm, And, we were both, I think you were at the Senior Bowl too, watching him throw, right? We weren't
Right, yeah.
working together at the time, but he was like night and day watching Wentz throw the ball versus, especially the quarterbacks on his team. He was with Cody Kessler and Kevin Hogan, and I think Jeff Driscoll. It was completely different watching those guys chuck it in cool weather down there in Montgomery, Alabama. Montgomery? Mobile, sorry.
Mobile, yep.
Montgomery was the site of the Division II College World Series. Sorry, I was just trying to
there you go.
Trying to relive some old college days. Yes, Mobile. Sorry, guys. So he's got a cannon for an arm, and you start to see that he's got the deep ball to Mac Hollins. He throws this deep crosser, and of course that spectacular play in the corner of the end zone after breaking out of a sack. So you start to see the high-level plays from Wentz. He's currently 5th in the league in percentage of big-time throws, 4th in the league in percentage of positively graded throws. So we're starting to see the value that he's adding to the offense. Really impressed with his last few weeks of play.
No doubt, and he's taking care of the ball. I think he had the interception last night on the second and forever that he flung up into the middle of the field that you didn't really like. But other than that, he's taking care of the ball. He's not taking as many risks late in the down as where he's typically struggled, just trying to make some of those hero type plays, and those haven't shown up lately in his grades. It's been very good overall in the season, but been even better the last couple of weeks because of those reasons. But you mentioned that play under pressure. That was maybe my favorite play of the whole year. How he was able to process all that stuff while the pocket was closing in and then taking a hit while he throws it. That was an unbelievable play, and you just want to see more of those happen with some of the negative stuff that sometimes can occur during those types of plays. Stay where they're at right now and kind of level off.
How did he make that play? Because we were watching the replay, and that was not a wheel route by the running back, right? That was a flat route that turned into a wheel. How does he know? How did he even know that guy was going to be there? Never mind putting it in a pinpoint location. That throw in a clean pocket is a big-time throw. His perfect ball location is great. But that's after breaking out of the sack. That truly was one of the best plays we've seen all year.
Yeah, it was incredible. He had, the running back was kind of the third option on that play. They had an over-the-ball guy, and then they had a post that was coming in, and he was under pressure, I think, in just over a second or so. And then to be able to kind of still see, he could still see his eyes work from 1 to 2 to 3, and to be able to feel all that and process that and then deliver the ball in a perfect spot was an incredible play. But you see, those highlight type plays, like you said, man, that's what you want to see from this guy and what you kind of thought he was going to be coming out.
What have you seen from how teams have played the Eagles? And we had talked about it in recent weeks. I think seeing a lot more man coverage and how are teams playing them and how are they attacking defenses so far this season with what they're going up against? You
saw last night early that pocket was closing in. There was a ton of man coverage, and they kind of had him out of sorts up until that deep shot to Mac Hollins. But you saw 67% of man coverage last night, and overall in the season they've seen it 46% of the time, which is the most in the NFL. The NFL average is about 29.5. So they're seeing a ton of man coverage. Teams trying to disrupt their quick rhythm passing game, all the RPO stuff that they do, and they're taking advantage of those deeper shots down the field, like you mentioned, Zach Ertz on the deep cross, and then you add in his element of athleticism, ability to take off and run. Versus man coverage last night, he had runs of 16, 17, and 26. Where the defensive man coverage, defensive backs turn to the QB, and he takes off and kills you. So it's a hard offense to defend schematically and how they have everything set up around him. And then he's a hard quarterback in general to defend with the stuff that he can do with his arm down the field and the athleticism. So it's all flowing together right now, and they got it going.
Yeah, if they're seeing that much man coverage, we know that he's an athletic guy, and we saw a couple times he was able to break out of the pocket. If you're seeing that much man coverage and you can just pick up quick games of 10, 15, 20 yards, it's so dangerous, especially overall the way he's throwing the football. So, look, it's very impressive.
Because he's a great zone quarterback, too, because he makes good decisions pre-snap, knows where to go with the football. So it's kind of a catch-22. You pick your poison, how you want to try to beat them, and if you want a guy standing right next to their guy, and hope that you can get some tips up in the air for chances at turnovers. That's kind of the way that teams have gone about it so far.
Yeah, and with Wentz, we talked last year. I think it seemed like he was much more comfortable in the quick game, and it seems like intermediate, the deep stuff, it's all starting to come together just a little bit more here in year 2. So I want to pump the brakes on MVP talk. It's still it's fun to discuss. We're still 7 weeks in. So far, so good for Wentz, and especially these last few weeks. Think early in the season there was still a few too many forced throws, and there were some bad fumbles early in the year, and he's cut out a lot of those to his game. He's kept a lot of the positives, and looking pretty good right now as the Eagles have the best record in the NFL. So that's where the MVP talk comes from. We'll talk a little bit more about Wentz later when we talk about all of the young quarterbacks that are in years 2 and 3. But one of the rookies, and again, he didn't play this weekend, Deshaun Watson of the Houston Texans. Last week, it just came up a little bit about, we had a ranking of about, I think it was 31st. It's at 28 right now, I believe it is on the site. For Watson. And, where does that come from? Especially because, some other traditional stats have him looking pretty good. Passer rating is 6th in the NFL. 15 touchdowns, was leading the NFL until this week when he had a bye, so he got surpassed by guys like Wentz. And, so all these stats are looking good. ESPN's QBR, I believe, has him at number 1, which I disagree with. Hey, we just disagree with. That's all it is. We disagree, and we had some talks, had some Twitter discussion with some ESPN guys about it, and they were questioning us as well. So I wrote up on the site, ProFootballFocus.com, essentially, the Week 1 game against Jacksonville was one of the worst we've seen, and he was in a tough situation, and it was in relief, and he got pressured over 50% of the time. All that stuff was working against him. That's dragging down his game grade quite a bit. But since he's come in as a starter, since Week 2, he's about a middle-of-the-pack quarterback, about 16 in the NFL since that time, his grade from that point, which I think is fair. So if I told you right now, 6 weeks, it's 6 games into Watson's career, that he's a mid-tier, middle-of-the-pack quarterback, despite what the stats or ESPN QBR or whatever it is say, do you think mid-tier is fair for Watson at this point, the way he's playing?
Absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned the Week 1, tough situation, offensive line, all those things. You have to still take it and run with what it was, but he's much more settled into kind of that middle-of-the-tier pack right now. Just, a lot of high variance to his game with, as you said in that article, not many consequences showing up. He's forced quite a few throws and, had some interception luck at times. And I think that doesn't show up in the passer rating. And I think that's kind of where we've seen his grade kind of level off at is, there's a ton of big plays, the splash plays, but far too many negatives as far as just finding completions throughout the game. And then you mix in some, turnover-worthy plays that have kind of gone in his favor that are showing the grade exactly where it's at right now.
Yeah, that was the point that I tried to make in the piece. Not only does he have the 4th highest percentage of negatively graded throws, top 10 as far as turnover-worthy throws, it's more so when the turnover-worthy throws, and there's different levels of turnover-worthy throws. That's why we grade on a scale of -2 to +2. There's different levels of them. There's a difference between, kind of leaving an out route inside a little bit where the defender has a shot at it versus completely misreading coverage and firing one right to a linebacker. And those have different scales. He's had a few on the bottom of the end of the scale, right? Just the worst throws that you can make, the end zone interception against Tennessee, the complete misread of the underneath linebacker against Cincinnati. But the point I made in the piece was that none of those plays really came back to bite at all. So they just don't. When you're watching a football game and you see that play, and it's like, oh, it was 1st and 10. He throws a bad pass. It gets dropped by dropped interception. Now it's 2nd and 10, and your head moves on. It sticks in your head if that linebacker catches it and takes it back for a touchdown, or a cornerback in the Bengals case. That's what happened in Week 2. He completely misread the coverage. Darqueze Dennard drops it. If that was a pick six, we'd be like, hey, remember that pick six that Watson
Exactly.
played? And that's what
Right.
it should have been. So
Right.
that was the point.
I think the best way that I think kind of makes sense in my mind is that the grade kind of it shows the what if plays. There's always 5, 6, however many plays throughout a game that you leave that night saying, man, what if so and so would have caught that interception? What if so and so would have caught that touchdown pass on the other side? So it takes out all those what if type of plays and throws it into their grade as if the average play by an NFL player was supposed to be made on that play. I think is the best way that why the grade makes sense and why it is a good way to judge quarterback play, because we're taking out so many of those. What if this? What if that? It's taking all that out, and we've also taken a few interceptions off him. He had one the first week, against Jacksonville where receivers bending around a linebacker in front of a safety, and he completely shuts off the route and takes it vertical upon his release point. Looks like a bad interception thrown right to the safety. That wasn't on him, so we take that is not considered a turnover-worthy play. So it works both ways with not only Watson but obviously everybody throughout the NFL, and you see week to week that guys have a little luck on an interception, and so hard to look at that box score and that pass rating and give a great idea of how a QB played, because it's just there's way too many variables, way too much things going on to just look at those hard stats.
Right. The Jacksonville example is good. Plus, he had end of the game Hail Mary interception against New England.
Right.
So I mean that's on the stats. That's not turnover worthy, of course, in our book. So that was a big part of it. Also, just from a pure stats standpoint, he's got only 2 drops. He has the lowest drop rate in the NFL. And certainly ball location has something to do with drops, but over time, it's not like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers are the best quarterbacks, therefore they have the lowest drop rates. It doesn't work that way. So there's some luck involved there. If you just tacked on, hypothetically, 8 or 10 more drops, which is probably about average in the NFL, of course the numbers are going to take a hit as well. So that's the basic gist of Watson. Let me just be a little positive here. He has shown some incredible playmaking ability, both as a runner and as a downfield passer. He's flashed it. He has shown a lot of what he did in college. And the other thing that he has shown that he could do, just like he did in college, was put doubters or put bad plays behind him. So we're listing his bad plays, Zach. And every single time it seems like he's able to bounce back and make plays when it counts and either keep his team in the game or perhaps make a comeback to win. So I'm very impressed with Watson overall, in the way he's played.
I agree. I think it's more so putting in context that he's not playing at the level of some of these top guys. You can't say he's playing at the level of Carson Wentz and what his stats are showing right now.
Right.
But he is playing. He's playing a lot better than I thought he would be playing at this point. I didn't think that he was going to be quite ready to handle this offense, but the offense has, they've changed and they've formed everything around him. There's split flow play action, and there's a lot of good stuff that they're doing to showcase what he can do and most importantly, what he's comfortable doing and what he did at Clemson. So I've been impressed, like you said, the bounce back play after play. The guy has it between the ears, and when you got that stuff going, he's going to have a chance. But he's got definitely a tough task at Seattle this week. I think that's going to be a big one to watch if maybe some of those INTs that haven't shown up will show up, or maybe he'll just go out and light them up. We'll see. But definitely looking forward to watching that game.
Yeah, if I had to make a prediction for the season, and I'm not saying it's going to happen this week, I think he's going to Seattle is not easy for any quarterback. But if I had to make a prediction, I would think that his grade would improve as the season goes on. I could see him playing better football, but the stats not looking as good as they do right now. So I mean, that's just where we are, I think, with Watson at this point. All right, let's move on to Blake Bortles. Jacksonville Jaguars have maybe the best overall defense in the league. Speaking of Seattle, that's what they look like on defense right now.
Those guys are unbelievable. Yeah.
Right? And again, so I love the fact that you watch every throw, and it's to grade the quarterbacks and evaluate quarterbacks and all that stuff, but you get to see how defenses attack quarterbacks and how well they play coverage. How good is this Jacksonville pass defense right now?
The tight coverage over and over every single snap, plus the pass rush. Like you said, it was like those Seattle teams that are just clicking when, if you have to come off of your first read and you got to take a next hitch, you don't have much past 3+1 hitch from the shotgun to get a ball off. Then when you make that throw, it's always going to be tight coverage. So those guys are unbelievable. We saw Jacoby Brissett just from the get-go last week under pressure. Then that forces you to be a little more indecisive in what you're seeing and all those things. But I'm with you. Those guys are playing lights out.
So now that they have this defense, you have Blake Bortles, whose MO the last couple of years has been high risk, high reward. He's going to have to drive the ball down the field. 2015, more deep passing yards than any quarterback in the league, and a lot of that was in garbage time. Last year, the lowest passer rating on deep balls in the league, it was like 16 or something. It was pretty bad. And now this year, it's like this totally new quarterback, and it's not that he's changed, it's the game flow has changed. They're now the team that literally tries to run the ball 25, 30 times a game, like it's 1985, and trust their defense to win. And it's working. They're able to take the ball out of his hands in a lot of these games. But I know in this game in Indianapolis, you were pretty impressed with what you saw and what Bortles was able to do.
Gosh, yeah, it was probably the most accurate game I've seen him consistently down to down. Since I started doing this, he was played with a great rhythm, made good decisions. That kind of freed him up a little bit with Fournette out, and he's making the throws that he should hit, taking care of the ball a little bit better. One stat that kind of stuck out to me this year is, he's got the sixth best pass rating on plays lasting 2.6 seconds or longer at 99.8, with only one pick. Last year he was third worst in the NFL at that time clip of 59.8 passer rating and 10 interceptions. He's making smarter decisions later in the down. He's finding checkdowns or doing a lot of play action, but he's not feeling like he's got to force that dig in over the middle or try to squeeze something in. He's got a back underneath, and you can tell he's fighting everything in him to want to try to let that thing go, but he is playing with some good control and overall threw the ball more accurately, especially last week. But you can look at a lot of his stats, negatives, positives, turnover-worthy plays, big-time throw, and he sits right about league average on a lot of those. Right. I think that's very good for him, and that's boding well for them as a team.
Yeah, so Bortles to me is just this fascinating study because, any quarterback's going to be a little bit better when you've got a good defense and a good supporting cast and a good running game and all that fun stuff. But how do you take this guy that's just on the top end of like your gunslinger index, right? He was a big percentage of big-time throws, high percentage of turnover-worthy throws, and now he's this guy that's taking care of the ball much better. It's not perfect. Like you said, everything's probably sitting about league average, currently 18th overall in PFF grade at 75.8, and he's a part of a clump of guys who are, the difference between 18th and 13th and 18th and actually 26th is really minimal right now. But how do you get this gunslinger-y type guy and you just completely rein him in? And that's what they've done. People were laughing at Blake Bortles last year because he had such a bad season, but I think
they wanted Chad Henne. They wanted Chad Henne 2 months ago, in the middle of that preseason.
And we said no, we can't go. We know what Henne is, and like top end, like the high end of Bortles in 2015, there was still some pretty good play in there. Like at least get back toward that a little bit. But look, they've reined him in. Is my point, and that's been impressive. And I think there's something to be said when you have Matthew Stafford. I think went through some of this in his career where they reined him in enough to just kind of get more efficient play out of him. I'm not saying Bortles is there yet, but so far so good, especially when you have maybe the best defense in the league behind you or on the other side.
Definitely, yeah. He's reined it all in as long as he can keep the turnover-worthy plays down, especially late in the down, like you were saying. He's sitting right at the exact same numbers as far as big-time throws to turnover-worthy plays, both at 3.2%. So hang around there with that defense, running game, and shoot, they got a chance to get in the playoffs and potentially do something.
The one other point you made a note to me during the week, you said, "Wow, not only was this the most accurate I've seen Bortles, in a game essentially, but they weren't easy throws." And I know it's easy to say, "Hey, they played the Indianapolis Colts. They don't have a great defense. They don't have a great back seven, and Malik Hooker got hurt, and all these different things. But when you talk about competition and which team you're playing, throw for throw is the best way to determine that, right? I mean, he had some challenging throws and made a lot of good ones on Sunday.
Yeah, it's hard to say just because you're playing the Colts defense that you have to get some certain type of scale to scale that back, because we just don't know. One guy might cover a guy better than Marquise Lee can run his route on that given play, so we don't need to change how that's viewed on that play. So throw for throw, there was some high difficulty throws, made some good throws down the red zone, and it was overall most accurate game I've seen, and I think definitely something confidence wise for him to just kind of bottle up and say look back and say, okay, this is what I can be if I play with a good rhythm and make good decisions and throw the ball confidently down the field.
Yeah, so again, that's my general complaint when you adjust for competition. I really think every football game is different. I think it all, it's scheme driven, it's player personnel driven, and just because QB X had a great game against the Colts doesn't mean that Blake Bortles also needs to have a great game against the Colts. The Colts could play a really good game that day against Blake Bortles, and he still is able to beat them with tight window throws or whatever it might be. So that's my general complaint with adjusting for competition. And I do think our grades, if you compare our grades to the stats, that's part of a natural adjustment for competition. So if you guys see a guy that has like a 70 game grade and he threw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns and his stats are great, he either had incredible playmakers or the defense that he played that day, doesn't matter what they had done coming into that game, whatever they did that day was pretty bad because he had an average game and some great stats. So I think, especially with our quarterback play, the adjustment for competition is kind of baked in a little bit based off when you kind of compare the stats to the actual grade, because the grade is only given credit for what happened with the throw, the decision, the throw, and the timing, and ball location and all that fun stuff.
And we've talked about this a while back, but there are games where you come in on Monday morning and you're sitting in the meeting room and you look at the stats, either the stats looks really good or maybe it looked bad, and you just say, man, on this day they kind of just had better calls than we did. They were covering their guys, and maybe your completion percentage looked at about 55% when in reality you're like, where else could I have found some of these completions? So like you said, man, it's game to game, play by play in terms of how you want to try to grade this stuff on a throw for throw basis.
Yeah, but to just conclude that point, the thing I always like to say is if you're going to hit a guy in stride with one step of separation, whether that throw happens against the Cleveland Browns defense or against the Seattle Seahawks defense, it's still the same throw. It's still the same thing. You might just have fewer of those throws maybe against the Seahawks than you do against the Browns, but I do think it evens out over time. Quick break to tell you about our friends over at draft.com, or you can find it by just looking up Draft in your app store. Download it immediately. It's a great way to play fantasy football. I know everybody here probably an NFL fan. I know you're an NFL fan, so you've got all those games, but if you're into the NBA, NHL, golf, or MLB, they've got games for you as well. Best part about this whole deal is you can win real money, and you don't even have to really keep up with it. It's all best ball leagues. You just draft your team and then forget it. You have full season leagues. You have 3-person drafts, 6-person drafts. They're head-to-head drafts, whatever you want. Games start every couple minutes. And like I said, you guys can win real money. But when you make your first deposit, you can get a free $3 game from us at PFF. Just use the promo code PFF. And you'll get a free $3 game over at Draft. That's draft.com or Draft in your app store. We've all been playing for a few months now, and I think my teams are doing pretty well so far during the NFL season. So go give it a shot. Use the promo code PFF and get your first $3 game. All right, let's talk about another young quarterback before we go in depth about the second and third year guys. It's Jared Goff of the Los Angeles Rams. We talked about Wentz at the top a little bit. The Wentz and Goff debate was a pretty heated one during the entire draft season. I know, again, you and I both liked Goff coming out. Last year was a disaster, not just from his standpoint, but everything around him standpoint. Clearly this year, the situation is much, much better. I feel like we're almost in pump the brakes mode the other way now, though, because last year we were saying, hey, don't worry about Jared Goff just yet. There's still a lot of talent there. There's stuff to build around. And now I'm almost on the other end of the spectrum where, these last few weeks he's taken a step back, even statistically, but he's still sitting there with a 90.3 passer rating, which is 14th in the league. And, everybody's talking about Sean McVay and what they've done there, but, he still has some issues there too. He hasn't completely, taken his game to where it needs to go just yet. Big step so far, but still some room to improve with Goff.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. I think early in the season it was like, okay, he can play, which what we talked about in the off season. We were still believers that he could play. There were some plays last year against New Orleans, and it didn't show up as much because they were so, schematically they were just behind and player wise. But you've seen it level off a certain extent. I think. In terms of just last week, throwing the ball accurately, ball placement was just a little bit off. It was kind of a sloppy game over there in London. Most of his bad plays are typically accuracy based, not decision based, and he's always going to have a chance, I think, in my mind, because he feels the pocket well, and he's very, very good at clicking through progressions and finding the open guy. And you mix in with that offense and what McVay does is to help out quarterbacks. You're seeing him play a lot better last week. I think it was a little step back maybe in terms of just some of the plays that he left out there that could have been made. But overall, you got to be pretty pleased with where he's at, and really organizationally how they've built around him, and all those things are definitely playing a big part.
Yeah. So last year when we went through essentially our second level of charting and analysis, and we went through each quarterback and charted, ball location and separation from the receivers on each route and all these different next level things. One of the things that stood out to me was that Kirk Cousins of the Redskins, McVay's team, had the highest percentage of open throws in the NFL. Cam Newton was the other end of the spectrum, highest percentage of tight window throws. And we're still early in what this data means, but I think it's certainly a combination of quarterback's decision making, how willing he is to maybe take the easy throw over the more difficult throw, but also schematically, right? How much is the scheme aiding the quarterback, whether it's a high number of screens, whether it's a lot of wide open bootlegs, whatever it might be. And I think that's a big factor with Goff so far this season as well. He has the lowest percentage of just contested catches so far in the season, another number that we're tracking. So that's those tight window throws where the receiver and cornerback are right at the catch point together. So I think there are just a higher percentage of open throws for Goff this year. And you mentioned his ability to click through progressions. That is the thing you and I were certainly holding on to. We said, look, when he ran this scheme at Cal, he has a quick mind. He has quick eyes. He's going from 1 to 2 to 3. And now you combine that with McVay, who ran a scheme that had the most open receivers last year. At the very least, you have a guy that, forget the physical stuff, at the very least, you have a guy that's going to scan the field and potentially find a lot of open receivers. And just there, we should have looked at it and said, okay, things will get better here with these two together.
Right, absolutely. I absolutely agree. I think he's always going to have a chance with that. And you look at where McVay mostly gets that stuff, and it's off of play action. Kirk Cousins, the last couple of years, we raved about their play action game last year especially. But they're getting chunk plays off play action. It hasn't shown up necessarily with his passer rating in terms of the top level guys. But when you look at yards per attempt off of play action, he's sitting at 5th in the NFL, 10.1 yards per attempt when using play action. So they're able to play action glance and skinny posts and all those things to scheme open, not necessarily open throws. He's still making the throws, but just things that he's comfortable with and he's seeing well. And, he's definitely seeing a lot of production off of play action like we kind of would expect with the McVay offense.
Yeah, there were some pretty ones. I do love watching the skinny post right off of play action. He had a couple of really nice ones. Later in the game, Arizona took it away, and he had to work to his next read. But he does look very smooth at doing that. He garnered a lot of Matt Ryan comparisons coming out. I was always a little wary of the Matt Ryan comp. It's because I think Matt Ryan is a very, very good quarterback and has been for a long time in this league. And I struggle a little bit. I've mentioned this before on the pod. I struggle a little bit with Goff's upside, and you still see the ball dying coming out of his hand sometimes. And we talked about the special throws that Carson Wentz has been busting out these last couple weeks. I don't know if Goff has those in the bag. I'm talking
Right.
not just like the break out of the sack, and I mean it's the zip and the tight window throws that that your best quarterbacks are able to make. Goff has some of them. Everybody's got some level of these, but to be able to be one of the top quarterbacks in the league, I feel like you need those in the bag, and I don't know if Goff has all.
I agree. I think that's really the only thing that you want to see. Physically, can he make that next jump? We've talked about it off air. Just he's still a skinny guy. He's still young. He's still growing into his body and all those things. Is his arm going to get a little bit stronger? When the pocket gets tight and he's got to deliver something, 15 yards, whether it's outside the numbers or a dig over the middle, whatever it is. Does he have enough power in his arm when he's not able to get everything right and just be able to fling it from the spot? So that's kind of what you want to see, and then playing out of structure as well, and playing on the move and making some of those little, even if simple as a check down throw we saw last week. Moving around in the pocket, and then he leaves one on the back hip, a guy incompletion. Some of those plays you want to see more of. He is a little bit limited in that area, but if he can, find a way to where he's a little more comfortable out of structure and finding completions that way, that's kind of the next couple steps that you're looking for here in year two.
Yeah, so that was kind of like part of my evaluation of Goff was that I like all these things about his game, but for him to reach that potential, that filling out and filling out his skinny frame and all that stuff was gonna need to lead to a little bit more zip, a little bit more arm strength. So still want to see that. There are games like this where the ball doesn't come out all that great. So look, still a lot more positive.
Hand size issue last week in London.
Well, you tell me again. 9-inch hands.
Yeah, I mean it's a real thing. I think he's going to have games like that where it's sloppy and it's he's not a Carson Wentz guy where Carson's got he's just a big dude, and some of those games where maybe he's got to go up to Seattle and it's rainy in December or something. He could struggle in those games. They play in a division where most of those games are going to be warm weather, but at those times when he kind of needs to play well in the sloppy conditions, is his accuracy going to be good enough? I think that's definitely something that we'll kind of have to monitor here as the year goes on.
Yeah, I mean, we knew that coming in, right? That's that there would be games like that, and that's where we are. The hand size issue is a thing. The ball just looks so big in Jared's little hands.
I know. Yeah, it does.
I love the point you made because you do have 9-inch hands. I make fun of you for it in jest, which is the hypothetical cutoff that the NFL has given. And now the NFL quarterbacks are stretching their hands and all this fun stuff. But you said it was the bad conditions, but also the quick game, right? Just catch and throw type of stuff.
Quick game. You saw it, last week. Catch and throws are a little bit more difficult. You don't have the quite control. When you got a chance to come off of maybe a play action and or a deeper route and get that ball kind of seated in your hand comfortably, I don't see an issue with those. It's the wet conditions. Sometimes when it's hot even and it's humid or whatnot, then you can have some issues there too. But definitely I'm with you. Quick game and accuracy-wise, I think coming out of college, that's where you saw he was a little bit lower than expected. And correct me if I'm wrong on quick game and those types of things. So it shows up quite a bit. It's just going to be kind of a week-to-week type of thing, I guess.
He was one of the most accurate in the class beyond 10 yards, 10 to 30 yards. And, the place where you want to make most of your NFL throws, but 1 to 10, those NFL throws that you need to not only hit, but, put on the right shoulder and put on the guy's numbers so they can catch and run. When we charted it for actual ball location, he was not great on that 1 to 10 yard stuff. So certainly something to keep an eye on with Goff. Still more positive than negative for him so far this season. Growth and development in the right direction, but maybe not the massive step forward that the media has been talking about with Goff, despite the Rams playing some pretty good football overall. So let's get into those guys just a little bit. We had the question on Twitter. I think it was posed mostly as, would you take the class of 2016 or the class of 2015? The class of 2016 being Goff, Wentz, and I think Dak was posed in the question, versus Winston and Mariota in 2015. and you're just going to sit on the fence and tell me you like all of them, right? Is that where we are?
Pretty much, yeah. I like them all. I mean, I think they're all at a pretty similar pace and in good spots, being built around. But I'll let you keep going. Maybe I got a guy here that I like more than the others.
All right. Well, look, they all have things to build around, and I think we're closing in on an NFL where Tom Brady's going to retire in 7 or 8 years, and Drew Brees is going to retire, and Ben Roethlisberger is going to take a step back, and Aaron Rodgers is banged up right now, but who knows what happens with him over the next few years. But you might have these high-end guys. I think you put Russell Wilson as the high-end guy, and Andrew Luck as the high-end guy, and maybe Matt Ryan, and maybe Derek Carr takes that next step. But there's still a lot. The rest of these guys right now, despite how Wentz is playing, still have to prove that they're top 5 guys, right? They might never be top 5 guys. And I think the NFL today is, if you have a top 10 to 15 guy, you'll have a shot. These guys are all either in that mix or potentially in that mix, and they all have something to build around. And I think that there's something to be said for that. I think you could build around Winston and win a championship. I've said that before.
Yeah.
I still have some questions about Mariota, but I think you can. I don't know if his high-end plays aren't as spectacular as Winston, but I think he has his own strengths and weaknesses. High-end Dak is outstanding. I think it's a consistency deal for him. And we just saw high-end Carson Wentz these last few weeks can absolutely carry a team. So you can win with all these guys. We just talked about Jared Goff. He has improved quite a bit, still has a ways to go. But I think you can win with all these guys. I'm sitting on the fence with you.
I agree. No, I think when you said that they're top half of the NFL guys, that's what they are. And who's going to make the next step in being that perennial, top 5, top 8 guy? If you're a top 8, 10 guy, I mean, you're playing at a very high level year in and year out typically. And I think when you look at all of these guys, if I got to take one right now to roll with, I think I would take Dak. With everything that he's kind of shown, and I know he's got a good situation there, but gosh, it'd be hard not to take him. He's a great decision maker, sees the field, added dimension of the running game. I mean, all these guys have different nuggets to their game that make them good players, but I would lean a little bit more towards Dak at this time, I guess.
Oh, yeah, so we said that a couple weeks ago. We both agreed. Man,
would you take Dak over Winston and Mariota, or are you kind of?
I would take Dak over Winston and Mariota, I think, right now.
Yeah.
Look, I'm still a believer in high-end Winston, right? Because right now he's leading the league in highest percentage of positive grades, and there is a thought process out there that, especially the way we view football, positives and negatives, just focus on the positives. The negatives you can overcome as long as you mitigate them a little bit, especially the turnover-worthy plays. But if you have those positives, in any given week or in any given season, those can carry a team. And I think Winston has that in him.
Right.
So I think that's still
just
there.
Random. It showed up last week. Oddly enough, it was just it's that 1 or 2 plays from him that you're just like, man, don't throw that. He's got such a belief that he can make every type of throw and every window. The last week they have a 2-minute drive at the end of the first half, and he forces a seam ball with 33 seconds to go. Ends up getting intercepted. I think that the score, they were down by 3 at the time. The next time they get the ball, they're down by a touchdown, or I can't remember the exact scores, but ended up they got the ball back. I think they were down 17-9 the next time they got it back. So it's plays like that where it's like, man, there's just 33 seconds left in the half. They're on their own territory. Check it down, go into the half, ends up throwing a pick, and really kind of was the difference in the game. He climbed back in the game and played really, really well. But that one mistake ended up kind of coming back to bite him.
Yeah, and I just think they'll just be like a year where he just doesn't make those mistakes. That's going to be
right.
That's Jameis Winston. It's Eli 2011, Eli 2007 down the stretch or through the playoffs, even though he didn't play great. But Winston will put that together at some point, and that's been my belief on him. There's some boom or bust to him. Dak, I mean, dude, if Wentz keeps playing the way he did, I know there's a little recency bias here, but if he keeps improving in some of the places where we asked him to improve, whether it's under pressure, working through progressions, and now he's using his legs when they play man coverage, and it's short, intermediate, and deep game where he's been throwing pretty accurately. Man, it's tough to deny Wentz, and that's going to be a fantastic battle, Wentz versus Dak twice a year, every single year now in that division.
And both guys, you look at what Wentz got around him with Doug Peterson, and the guy just knows the game. He knows how to set up the game plan around what he's doing well. So all these guys have been Mariota. We look at his situation, how they've been built around. I think there's been kind of a good blueprint for these teams that draft these high draft picks outside of Dak. That hey, let's what can we do to get this guy the best stuff around him, and all have done a great job, and all are seeing a payoff here in their second and third years.
Yeah, that was the big point. Right when they got drafted, the point that I made about Wentz is he's in a great situation. All the quarterbacks and Peterson and a system that has been built around everybody from Donovan McNabb to and Alex Smith. I mean, it's the Andy Reid same type of West Coast system. I'm saying they've had multiple types of quarterbacks, downfield threats and conservative guys and aggressive guys and run threats. They've built around everything. So, Wentz definitely went into a good situation. And you've been saying all season that scheme is really playing to his strengths, hiding his weaknesses, and perhaps, hiding them to the point where they're becoming strengths. So,
yeah.
All right, healthy debate. You guys can all chime in. PFF_podcasts. That's where we do all of our podcast debating. Let us know. Goff, Wentz, Dak, Winston, Mariota, classes of 2015 and 16. Any of those guys ready to be top tier guys? Are they top 5 guys, top 10 guys? Doesn't even matter. Are they all good? Let us know over at PFF_podcast. If you guys want some NFL draft discussion, not only do we have a drafts podcast that you guys need to check out, search PFF Drafts, but last week Zach and I did go in depth. We went quick, but it always ends up in depth on the potential draft class for next year. So if your team is starting to get out of the race a little bit, sorry Browns fans, 49ers fans, if you guys are falling out of the race, listen to last week's podcast and catch up on some of the top quarterbacks in college football. You good, Zach? I think we can wrap it up. No quick hitters this week?
No, I think we're good. Matt Moore's taken over, looks like, for a little bit. He came in and made some big throws down the stretch. I was impressed with what he did. I think he gives that team a little juice. I think he's going to give his guys a chance to make plays down the field.
He's better than Cutler, right?
I think so. I think I do think so. I think his style of play is, we saw him in the playoffs and kind of down the stretch last season. He's an aggressive type of player and going to take hits, and so can he sustain and stay healthy throughout the whole year? We'll see. But I definitely think he's a better player at this point than Cutler, and we'll see if they can keep clicking, because they've been a huge surprise with where they're sitting right now.
Anybody else that stood out? I cut you off on the quick hitters. You watched every throw. Any other quarterbacks, good or bad, indifferent, that stood out? Mitch Trubisky won a game while throwing 7 passes. That was fascinating.
7 passes. He made most of those 7 throws.
They were good, yeah.
He played the game they were asking him to play. I think that the biggest thing with him is, and we wrote it up in the scouting report coming out, is blitz recognition, and we've talked about it. It's just you saw Carolina start heating him up with some third and medium blitzes, and him not knowing where it was coming from, not knowing where to go with the ball. He had chances to get the ball out and potentially move the chains on some of those third and mediums. But you want to see they're playing in New Orleans this week, so he's going to be heated up with every blitz known to man. So we'll see how he can kind of respond to that situation. But winning a game on seven passes, shoot, man, not bad.
It's so funny. It's actually hilarious here in 2017. And going up against New Orleans, who's no longer a laughingstock defensively. Brett Hundley, his debut, I thought there was a little hit or miss there. C.J. Beathard, his first ever NFL start, I thought he looked like a mid-round rookie. Pretty much for San Francisco.
I think so. There's still some good with his game, and I think there's going to be a lot of bad with the pocket stuff, the feel in the pocket, and those types of things. Definitely showed up a little bit last week, but he's a gritty guy and he can make some down the field throws. So they'll have some chances to win some games with him down the stretch. Try to think who else stuck out really from last week. Tyrod Taylor played a great game. He made some big plays. He continues to just take care of the ball, hit 2 or 3 big chunk plays per game off of play action, use his legs on third down. I think that's his ticket is they're going to get into 3rd and 7+, however many times a game, 4 or 5 times a game. If he can pick up 2 of those with his legs and not be required to win from the pocket on some of those, that's kind of his ticket, and he's definitely making it work right now.
Couple interesting numbers there. Tyrod, lowest percentage of turnover-worthy plays in the NFL, on a record pace, by the way, through 7 games for turnover-worthy plays.
No kidding.
Number 2 was the guy that I wanted to criticize a little bit, and that's Matt Ryan. He's got the 2nd lowest percentage of turnover-worthy plays in the NFL, but there's still something just lacking there with Matt Ryan. Sunday night, going up against New England, they didn't score until late in the 4th quarter. Just missed on a number of throws. He had it, just a little late on some red zone passes. There's just something missing, either from a timing or an accuracy standpoint, with that Atlanta passing game. And I don't think the guys around him are playing poorly. The offensive line's doing all right, and the receivers are still pretty decent. Matt Ryan is just a little off. He's taking care of the ball, but he's not making the big-time throws, not making the special throws that he made last year, and he's just got a much higher percentage of negative throws. He's just missing way more throws than he has in the past.
Yeah, I think a little bit, scheme-wise and what they're missing with Kyle Shanahan, new coordinator.
Oh, that whole deal too. Like, yes, they don't have those free and easy schemed up, deep balls and easy throws, but it's got to go a little beyond that, though.
Yeah, I'm with you. The accuracy, just pure ball location, has been less of what we saw last season. I think obviously we saw him at the very, very best that he can be. I think it's been not bad by any means, but definitely a big notch below what we saw last season.
Yeah, and that's the whole point. We made it a couple weeks ago when we talked about Ryan in more depth. We're used to seeing him being a top 10 quarterback, at the very least, last year top 3, and he's just been a middle. I mean, he's 10th in PFF player grades, but that was, it's still, he's playing at a more of a mid-tier type of level. That's just where the quarterback play is right now. All right, that'll do it for us today on the Big Time Throwcast, your quarterback-centric episode of the PFF podcast. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. You guys will have a chance to win PFF Elite for free. We're giving away 1 each week to 1 5-star reviewer. Leave your Twitter handle or an email address so we can get in touch with you. PFF Elite now comes with game-by-game grades that we'll send you, and you can do it monthly as well, which was a big hit for a lot of our hardcore fans, hardcore users, especially some DFS people that just want to try it out. So go give it a shot. And the other thing we're now allowed to do is give you $10 off as well. So if you leave your 5-star review and you don't win, you still want to get it, $10 off. That works on the monthly as well. It's the promo code PFF10. Just type that in. You get $10 off any PFF product, whether it's Elite or it could be Edge. That's our cheaper product. You get the player grades and fantasy tools and all of our draft coverage in there. So a lot of good value over at PFF. Don't forget the promo code PFF10 and go check it out. 2 more big episodes left this week. We got a mailbag with Sam and I. Email us at podcasts@profootballfocus.com. That's multiple podcasts. And then your Week 8 review will be on later in the week. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, and we will chat again next time.